Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode, the final video verdict, whatever you want to call it, on Audric Estime in terms of his data profile. So he hasn't done the agility test yet. He probably could go to his pro day and run a 4.640 or better, but we're going to get into his data. The combine is finished, and we have a final evaluation on Audric Estime because he has gotten a lot of hate. A lot of people have jumped the ship, so to speak, and I'm here to kind of temper yourselves down a little bit, all right? Calm down a little bit. We're going to go through the historical data. We're going to try to calm you down a little bit. That Audric Estime is still a good running back prospect. It's just he probably is going to go day 3, and a lot of stuff is really going to depend on the team that drafts him, in terms of the competition he has. But with all that stuff out of the way, let's get into his data. So if you've seen this video before or not, this is how I get offensive market share data scores, and this is how he performed. Again, he was 80 percentile in terms of total offensive market share. He was in the high 49 percentile in terms of receiving market share, and then of course he was in the 80 percentile area in terms of touchdown market share. Good numbers for him, definitely in the Pro Bowl starter range for a back in terms of his production. Moving to his efficiency scores. Efficiency also in terms of his TD percentage was pretty decent in the 90 plus percentile. So every time the ball got into his hands, he usually ended up getting a touchdown, which is a pretty good metric for him. And then, of course, when you look at his yards per reception, that was about average, which is usually indicative of a back who's more using the screen game, those types of things. Again, I'm just assuming. I haven't seen every single game of him on film to determine that, but usually backs that have an average yards per reception or less usually are used more in the screen game and those types of things. And then, of course, in terms of yards per rush or yards per touch, which is RRAV, he was 87 percentile in terms of that particular metric, so he was a very efficient running back for the most part, with the exception of him as a receiver. Now, when you move on to his athleticism testing, which is what everybody's going to talk about, you can pause video real quick, but I do something called mass density athleticism testing. I look at prospects based on how athletic they are for their size, and for Audric's size, he had a 90 plus percentile explosive lower body strength score, deals with the vertical and the broad jump for his size, but he had a 30 percentile speed score, which is how fast he was for his size. And percentile scores, for those who might be curious, is essentially this. What you are saying when a running back has a, say, 30 in his speed percentile score, you're saying that he is as good or better than 30% of the running backs that have tested with the 40-yard dash since the 1999 NFL draft class, which is not the best number you really should have. And honestly, the biggest thing I should say about Audric is that he did hit at least a 79 percentile athleticism score. Every single All-Pro or Pro Bowl running back, for the most part since 1999, have had at least one 79 percentile athleticism trait, and Audric has at least one in terms of his explosion testing. It's just his speed score is not that great for him. So that is going to be definitely a concern that scouts are going to have about him. Is probably why he might end up going in day 3 of this particular draft class. But there are a couple things that we need to discuss also in terms of his adjusted production scores. Adjusted production takes a look at the context of his production. How productive is he for his age, his level of competition, and of course, the team that he was on. And in those particular areas, he had a 99 percentile age score. Audric is easily one of the youngest running backs in this particular draft class. And then, of course, he had a 80 percentile MSA rating and then a 90 percentile pass rating. Again, the MSA rating takes a look at the market share scores, and then the pass rating includes like efficiency data. So overall, he has a great production profile. No matter how bad he did at the combine in terms of his 40, he still has a great production profile. But what does that mean in the long-term outlook on him? Well, getting into some historical comparables, these were all of the backs that tested like Audric Estime based on his production traits. Guys like Jonathan Stewart, Stephen Davis, John Riggins, Jordan Howard, Kijana Carter, Darius Guy, Samaje Perine, Jeremy Hill. And then these are the backs that tested like him in terms of his speed score with his explosion testing. Not a great area to be in. And these is in terms of backs that also were drafted. Guys like David Sims, Rex Burkhead, Alexander Madison, William Green was a first-round pick. And then, of course, you have Cedric Cobbs. The only thing I can tell you, though, is that despite the fact that all of these backs, and just pay attention to this, pay attention, stay with me, despite the fact that all of these running backs on here didn't have that much success at the NFL level, when you look at it, all of them were much older prospects compared to Audric. So David Sims was a 10 percentile guy in terms of his age. Alexander Madison was in the 23 percentile. Cedric Cobbs was in the 27 percentile. Rex Burkhead was in the 55 percentile, and William Green was in the 65 percentile. Why is that important? Because age is a major factor in terms of NFL success at the running back position. The best way to kind of explain it, or at least how I usually explain it, is I have done gardening in the past. And when you garden out in the field, you will have seeds, and you'll plant the seeds, and you'll have seedlings. And you'll have some seedlings that are bigger than the other seedlings. They're the same age, it's just that one of them is bigger than the other one. It has been my experience, or any gardener would even tell you this as well, the bigger seedling typically will become a bigger plant and produce more fruit at the next level compared to the smaller seedlings. That is essentially the importance of age in a nutshell. And that is also why, despite the fact that Audric Estime ran a very slow 40, the fact that there hasn't really been a running back who's had consistent success in the NFL with a speed score that low, or with this combination of traits, is definitely concerning. But there also has never been a running back who was quite as productive as him that came out with these traits. And there also has never really been a running back who is as young as Audric is coming out in this particular draft class. Most of the backs I just mentioned could have failed just for the fact that they're older. You know, they're older backs. Older backs typically have less successful outcomes in the NFL. So despite the fact that they may have been slow, they don't quite have those, concerns from that kind of perspective. Next up, taking a look at some backs. Again, I'm not trying to compare Audric to these backs in particular, but I'm just trying to get you into the mind frame of what this skill set looks like, okay? Backs that typically have really good explosiveness but less speed are backs like Mike Alstott, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or CEH, I guess is the best way to put it, and Kareem Hunt. All of these backs have had success in the NFL, some more than others, but you can clearly see something here. These backs, very explosive, not the fastest cats out there, but again, the way that they win is with explosiveness. So they're able to make explosive cuts. And, and I think in terms of, if you look at Audric, okay, the speed score is not that great, but they share a similar quality of being explosive backs. Audric wins on film, wins with precise footwork, explosive lateral cuts, and powerful balance. That type of athleticism trait describes Kareem Hunt to a T, describes Aaron Jones to a T, describes Alvin Kamara to a T to a certain extent. Mike Alstott compares him as well. Alstott up the gut is a catchphrase because of his ability to make quick, explosive lateral cuts at the line of scrimmage. So with a zone blocking scheme, And I'm not trying to get too technical in this video, but the zone blocking scheme can get away with a running back who's not quite as fast because the scheme is designed more so for fast, explosive decisions by the running back. You don't have to be super fast in that particular scheme. You're not trying to run him on sweeps and those types of things. You're just trying to get him to make great decisions, explosive decisions, and those decisions have to get, yardage. Audric can win that way. He has the athleticism traits as a 90 plus percentile explosion back to win in a zone scheme, a scheme that utilizes him in the manner in which he is making explosive cuts, getting downhill, and going, basically kind of zigzagging a little bit, if you will, in terms of how he wins. So again, he's not a speed back. I don't think he's ever going to be a speed back. I think anybody who's watched this film knows that. But I think this is not the nail in the coffin for him as a fantasy prospect, and this isn't a nail in the coffin for him in terms of other things as well. I think this kind of brings me back to a running back that I saw everybody discount in terms of Dalvin Cook. Everybody, when Dalvin Cook had his combine, he had a terrible combine. He was, bottom percentile in terms of explosiveness, bottom percentile in terms of flexibility for his size, and then in the 40-yard dash, he was trash. He basically had an average 40. He barely had an above average 40 once he actually fixed his 40 at his pro day, in which case nobody cared because of what he ran at the combine. I still was in on Dalvin Cook. Why? Because he was young, just like Audric, and he had a great production profile. Now, Cook is a much better production profile than Audric, though. That's the only thing. But you have to kind of have a holistic view to how you view draft prospects using data. You can't just take one thing and just discount everything else they did because of that one thing. You have to actually kind of use your brain a little bit to determine what this guy's going to be at the next level. In terms of Audric, I think it's very clear. The path is very clear here. If he goes to a team that has a zone blocking scheme, a scheme that is not trying to get him on sweeps, basically trying to get him to the perimeter really fast and outrun guys. If he's getting into a scheme where he's going downhill and basically doing explosive lateral cuts, if you will, he's going to thrive in that system. He's going to thrive in that scheme. And on top of that, he's also going to be breaking tackles and doing all sorts of other stuff as well. So that is the thing, guys. If he goes to the right team, there's never been a back with this type of athleticism skill set to really be successful at the NFL level, based on the data stuff that I do. But there also hasn't been one that's as young as him, and there hasn't been one who has had this sort of combination of traits at the same time. So again, you can discount him if you want. You can basically throw as much dirt on him as you want. But I'm telling you guys, as somebody who has kind of, sometimes, you have to kind of jump out a little bit and just kind of make a proclamation. I think Audric Estime, despite the fact that his 40-yard dash was what it was, I don't think that would be why he's going to bust at the NFL level, if he even does bust, because I think there's still a good chance he's going to be a successful running back when you take a look at it from a holistic view. Now, in terms of outlook for him, after going through everything, I still see Audric Estime profiles as a potential Pro Bowler, again, more of an outlier Pro Bowler, don't get me wrong, based on his athleticism traits, to long-term starter based on data. I think the biggest red flag in his data comes down to his receiving market share and, of course, his speed score at this point. Most running backs who have this profile tend to thrive in committee systems where they're not relied on to be a pass catcher. Look at Alfred Morris, for example. The list goes on. Any Shanahan backs that you've heard of typically didn't run very fast, but they were explosive. That trait, explosiveness, is what they had, on top of having really great footwork and really great decision making as a running back. So some teams may have him off their board due to this flaw in terms of his speed, while others will covet his ability to finish in the red zone. So again, it will really depend in terms of where he goes, in terms of those types of things. with him. But overall, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Jim Coburn. Check out my other work at Twitter on or X on Geometrics. Check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/jcoburn. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know below what you think about Audric Estime, if you're still in on him, if you're not. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.